The wind of the Remicane sang like a deathless choir. Its voice, hollow and harp-like, slid between frozen needles of pine and over snow-draped chasms, then coiled about my ears with whispers old as myth. I had not spoken aloud in 2 days. What need had I when every sound I uttered was swallowed by the hush of eternal frost or returned to me garbled by mountain echoes? Solitude, yes, but no loneliness, only the stirring hush of ancient power. I had come seeking the creature they named Dahad, the Lord of Ice, whose body bore ridges like mountain crags and whose breath, they said, could still the blood in a man's heart, yet none I met had seen it and lived. And so, with bow slung across my back and my long sword sheathed at hip like a slumbering flame, I pressed into the ice-shard cliffs, led by instinct, old tales, and the hush that precedes calamity. The snows here are not white, but blue-veined like marble. Beneath them, the cliffs glimmer with a strange pallor, as though frozen tears of the moon were buried deep in the stone. It is a land sculpted by grief, I thought, and in my chest I felt the same slow ache, a yearning not for conquest, but for communion with whatever force birthed this silence. At dusk I reached the edge of a sheer drop. The wind was fierce now, a blade honed by altitude. Below, where a river once ran free, now lay a long trench of sculpted ice, its glassy face marred with great furrows, wounds too vast for man or wyvern. I knelt there, pressing my gloved fingers into the snow-dusted ridges. Dahad has passed here, I murmured, as if to no one, and yet to the snow, the stone, the quiet itself. And the wind, did it answer? For a moment I imagined I heard it, a deep groan beneath the ice, far off, like a breath drawn inward. Not the cry of the wind, but a pulse. I pressed onward. That night I made no fire. The heat might draw unwanted eyes. Instead, wrapped in sealskin and furs, I nestled beneath the leaning arm of a petrified tree, its limbs black and brittle as bone. The stars were cruel and brilliant above, and I watched them while my breath made slow ghosts in the air. I dreamt that night of a serpent of frost winding down from the stars, its eyes full of sadness, its tongue of thunder. When morning came, I was not alone. By twilight, I came upon a ravine, narrow and steep, its walls seared with lines like lightning frozen in stone. I descended. The air here was different, not simply cold but quiet. No birds, no wind. No sound save the crunch of my boots and the breath in my throat. It was a place untouched, sanctified by presence. I had entered the Dahad's domain, and then I saw it. At first, only a shadow on the far cliffside, a silhouette carved in the slow dusk. But as I crouched beneath an overhang of ice, I beheld it in full, a monstrous form coiled like a glacier given breath. Its back rose and fell in solemn cadence, and vapor drifted from its nostrils like smoke from ancient altars. Plates of frost-armored hide shimmered faintly in the dying light, casting prismatic colors like oil upon water. I did not draw my bow. I did not unsheathe my blade. I only watched, heart thudding like drumbeats in a church of silence. The Dahad was not merely a beast. It was a hymn of winter, a psalm of stillness, a verse penned by frost and time. And in that moment, I felt neither hunter nor man, but acolyte. My hunt had begun. But it would not be one of blood. It would be one of truth. The cold crept in, not as predator, but as sovereign. The winds had long since stripped the branches bare, and the last remnants of sun had bled into twilight, leaving the verdant glaze behind me bathed in pallid silver. Snow did not fall from above. It drifted, suspended in the air like ash from a spent god. I traveled alone through South Gulch, a narrow vein running through the windward plains, where the storms howl not from sky but from stone. Even the endemic life here, lantern wings and shriek owls, had taken roost in silence, their usual bioluminescence dimmed by an instinctive dread. They knew, the land knew, and now I knew. Dahad was near, not cataloged by the guild, not spoken of in official terms. No entry in the Research Commission's lexicon bore his name, but the hunters who'd passed through the wayward outpost, those who returned with shattered gear and silence in their eyes, they'd given him that name, Dahad, the roar that doesn't echo, a monster beyond category, one not yet tamed by title. I could not feel my hands. The bow slung across my shoulder, Celine's spine, crafted from Lunagaran fragments and tempered in starfall ice, creaked under the strain of the temperature drop. The air shimmered with cold so profound it bent the light. Then, from the mouth of the gulch it came, a shadow among shadows, massive, slow, sure. He stepped into view with the majesty of a blizzard rising over the ocean, elegant and inevitable. Dahan, he who moved not with rage but with purpose. His hide bore scars not from battle but from survival. Like Tigrex, he had the shoulders of a brute, but his gait was measured. His eyes, like the shimmer of dying embers trapped beneath glass, met mine. No threat, no warning, just presence. He bore glacial plates along his spine like jagged peaks carved from the frost fangs. His breath, a vapor of death, reeked not of sulfur but of mineral cold, a storm-locked cave's scent. When he roared, he did not shake the earth, he stole its rhythm. And for a moment I forgot myself, forgot the quest ID etched in my hunter's journal, forgot the handler's voice still echoing from my comstone. I was no longer hunter, I was witness. Then he charged. It was not brute momentum, but glacial pressure. I loosed an arc shot and Celine's spine sang. Crystalline shrapnel lit the night, searing trails through the ice, but Dahad's hide bore it like stone bear's rain. He met me with shoulder first, not fang, driving me back through brittle snowbanks. The endemic life fled in brilliant pulses. Puff shades erupted in panic, leaving clouds of luminous spores. I ducked, rolled, fired again. Piercing frost coiled along his flank, and he roared, not in pain, but in statement. A war cry not of anger, but of memory. For Dahad is not simply new, he is old. Older than the guild's maps, older than the warped seaway, older than the huntsman's legacy. His kind had walked these lands when the sands still flowed where frost now rests. And I, foolish romantic, had come to challenge him not with might, but myth. Yet in that clash of breath and frost and firelight, I found clarity. The cold had teeth. It gnawed the tips of my fingers through 2 layers of hide and linen, worked beneath my collar, and hummed in my bones like a mournful song. Trees stood leafless, rhymed with age, and the snow lay heavy over the ridgelines, untouched but by wind and ghost. All was quiet, until it wasn't. He came down the slope as cloud devours the moon, without haste, without sound, Dahad. No title could name him properly. He was no mere apex. He was memory carved in scale, time crusted in ice. A beast not born, but remembered by the land itself. His horns curved like the roots of ancient trees. His breath exhaled mist that froze the sky. I did not raise my weapon, not yet. He looked at me from afar, and I felt not fear, but recognition. As if my presence had been expected, written somewhere deep beneath the ice long before I learned to walk. And then, with no more warning than the sigh of the wind, he moved. The snow exploded beneath his forelimbs. He charged, not with fury, but with the inevitability of winter. My feet barely found purchase on the slick stone as I threw myself aside. A boulder the size of a cart shattered where I had stood. Then instinct took over. I readied Celine's spine, the bow that had served me through the dense canopies of the windward plains and the gorges of the Ash Vale Plateau. I drew 3 arrows, dusted with blast, and sent them into the air, more prayer than attack. The second found its mark, behind his frigid mane, near the thinner plates. A flare of fire bloomed. He reared back. A sound echoed out. Not pain, but an old groan, like glacial shelves collapsing somewhere miles below the surface. Lantern wings scattered into the sky. He turned his body to face me fully, his neck curling like a riverbend of ice and sinew. Then the real trial began. He lunged, tail sweeping like a scythe. I ducked beneath its arc, boots sliding across a frozen slab, and dove behind the roots of an upturned tree. He struck again, and the roots exploded into splinters, showering the gulch in shards of ancient bark. I moved, faster than I ever had, and found my path toward a natural ledge. There, I planted a shock trap, buried it beneath a sheet of powder. He followed. The trap lit with a snap of blue. Dahad faltered. He roared, but it was not rage. It was music, a dreadful, sublime sound, older than fire. Caught in the brief paralyzing hum, his limbs stilled, only for a moment. I sprinted in and released a razor arrow, its shaft lined with tempered wyvern steel. It slid beneath a cracked plate near his ribs. The wound was shallow. He did not fall. He watched. And then, with a convulsion of limbs and breath, he shattered the trap. The snow erupted, and I was flung back, skidding across the ice like a stone cast across a lake. I lay still. Above me, the gulch opened to a sky woven with stars. The cold bit my back through the furs, but it did not steal my breath. It gave it purpose. I stood slowly. He approached, step by massive step, each footfall sending dull tremors through the ground. But he did not rush me. His head lowered just slightly, and the breath that emerged from his nostrils frosted the rocks around me in slow curls of steam. We stared at one another. No hunter, no quarry. Only 2 beings caught in the deep breath of the world, where death and wonder intertwine. I readied my final dragon piercer, but I did not draw it. Something in his eyes, ancient, knowing, not cruel, held me still, not frozen, no, humbled. Dahad exhaled once more, and slowly, deliberately, turned his body back toward the dark edge of the gulch. The wind stirred behind him. He did not flee. He withdrew as a storm does, not ended but departed for now. snow had not ceased, though I had not noticed it falling. After Dahad vanished into the pale, I tracked him, not with arrogance nor with haste, but with the quiet determination of one whose soul had been stirred. Each print he left in the frost was a wound upon the land, steaming faintly in the cold, rimmed with ice that grew in delicate fractals. The lantern fauna no longer glowed. They had fled. It was deeper now, the place he had gone, older. I crossed frozen rivers, their surfaces brittle with frost glass. I passed a cliff carved by ancient winds where a ruin stood, old guild masonry, shattered long ago by beasts no scroll had named. And there, within a hollow basin circled by blackened pines and cliffs of shale, I found him again. Dahad stood still. Above us the moon strained through thin cloud, but its light could not touch him. He was a shadow upon the frost, his mane risen like spines of a thunderhead. His breath rose in twin pillars, slow and deep. He turned to me, not startled, ready. The storm began. He struck with speed unnatural for his size. I dove, narrowly escaping a snap of his fangs. Ice erupted where they met the ground. Spike frost, a deadly mutation of elemental discharge unique to South Gulch's apex predators. It lanced upward in jagged pillars, one slicing my thigh as I rolled to cover. I loosed 2 arrows, one blast, one para. They struck his chest. He roared, deafening now, a sound that shattered ice on the ledges above. The cliffs groaned, and fragments fell like meteors. The ground shook. Lantern wings, those that had dared return, rose again in golden clouds and were scattered into the gale. He charged. I ran. The cliffs narrowed into a gorge, and I led him there, where his size would work against him. Ice fell from his shoulders in sheets, each the size of a greatsword. He howled, a low, bone-deep sound that echoed through the gulch like a dirge. He was no longer defending, he was hunting me. The gorge narrowed. My trap was there, buried beneath a cluster of collapsed rock, a thunder mine, set hours earlier. He followed, heedless of terrain, too vast to worry. He stepped upon the mark. I gave the signal. A deafening crack. Lightning lanced upward. He staggered. I did not wait. I sprinted forward and fired the dragon piercer again. This time aimed not at the torso, but upward, into the throat exposed by the roar. The arrow blazed, the shaft vibrating with energy as it pierced through scales softened by frost. A gash. A howl. Blood sprayed in a mist of red steam. The ground hissed where it landed. Dahad reared back and struck the cliffs with his tail. The stone split. A boulder tumbled down, slamming into my shoulder. My vision swam. I dropped to one knee, gasping. He came closer. His breath rolled across me like winter's final breath, freezing, almost gentle. His eyes found mine again. And something changed. There was no mercy in them, but there was no hatred either, only will. The will of a thing that had never been hunted, only watched. A creature bound not to rage, but to presence, to being. And I understood then, this battle was not about death, it was about meaning. I screamed, not in fear but defiance, and rose. I ran toward him. Arrow after arrow I loosed. Flames danced across his flanks. He struck, his claws grazing my side. I spun, staggered, but held. The storm had no voice now, only thunder and the cracking of frost. He howled again, and the sky, I swear, replied. A distant rumble. The wind rose, snow curled into vortices. The lantern wings fled into the dark. And Dahad stood firm, wounded, towering, alive. So was I. The battle had not ended, but it had reached its summit. And as we circled one another, breath drawn ragged in the frozen dark, I knew the next moment would not belong to fate. It would belong to choice. Dawn had not yet broken. The world was still caught in that dim hour between night and knowing, when the sky pales but the sun has not yet stirred. I had not slept. There was no rest in that gulch, only the slow thaw of breath and blood. Dahad still lived. Wounded, yes, but not diminished. He moved through the frozen basin, like the final verse of an old hymn. We had circled each other for hours, testing range, resolve, endurance. Now, all games were spent, all caution burned off in the cold. It was time. He stood beneath a cliff of blackened ice, his breath steamed in deep gusts. The scars along his flank shimmered faintly, one from my first blast arrow, one deeper, where the dragon piercer had pierced his mantle. I stood opposite, bow in hand. Celine's spine trembled faintly in my grip, not from weakness, but from knowledge. I had hunted creatures great and cruel before. Rathian of the Ashvale Cliffs, Diablos among sandstorms, a roaring tigrex on a lone volcanic isle. But this was different. Dahad was not rage, not even pride. He was majesty. Still, I had come here as a hunter. He roared and the cliffs shook. Then he charged. The wind itself bowed to his fury. I ran straight toward him, loosing arrow after arrow, not wildly, but in rhythm like a hymn. Blast and shock lit the air. He reeled, swung his tail like a comet. I ducked, rolled, fired again. His chest heaved. One eye squinted shut from swelling. I knew he was fading, but so was I. Every rib screamed. My shoulder, still bruised from the boulder, sang with fire. I had one last shot left. One single dragon piercer, the finest arrow I had ever crafted, head tipped with tempered dragon bone, shaft balanced with Lunagaran feather. I had named it once, in silence, Last Light. He charged again, slower now. Snow sloughed from his back. I drew. The wind dropped. Time halted. I saw him as he truly was, not a beast but a spirit bound to this land, more than predator, a part of the ice itself. The embodiment of all wild places untouched, unruled, and I loosed Last Light. The arrow screamed. It struck beneath the chin, drove deep through scale and frostplate, and found the heat of life within. A burst of blood fountained against the snow. Dahad stumbled, then knelt, not collapsed, not broken. He knelt, graceful, as if choosing the place where he would fall. A long breath escaped him, a plume of frost. His gaze met mine. And there, in his final moment, there was no anger, only peace. The storm was over. His body slumped to the side, vast and still. I approached slowly, my boots crunched softly across the snow. I laid one hand upon the fur of his shoulder, warm still with fading life. I closed his eye, out of reverence, not conquest, and then it was silent. No bird sang, no insect moved. The lantern wings hovered just above, flickering like stars. The cold, so bitter before, now felt gentle, almost kind. I sank to my knees beside him. It is not the roar that stays with you, I thought, but the quiet after it ends. I lit a fire by his side, not to celebrate, but to remember, to honor. As the sun rose behind the ridge, casting gold across the frost, I whispered the only truth I had left. Sleep now, sovereign of snow. The land remembers you, and so shall I.